Welcome to Below the Line with Dr. Bennie L. Harris. The Chancellor of the University of South Carolina Upstate talks with top leaders about issues such as change, technology, education, and leadership. Please enjoy.
Congressman, thank you so much for being here with me. I'm here today with Congressman Jonathan Jackson, and I'm excited. I feel honored. You are a legacy. Your family is a legacy, and you have chosen to spend some time with me on the podcast of Below the Line, where we have the opportunity to talk about leadership. So I'm just jump right into it because I know your time is very valuable. You grew up in a family deeply connected to public service, but your own path has included business, it includes finance and community development. Tell me about the journey and what's something about it that the public may know or tends to overlook, may not know or tends to overlook.
Well, my father, to put that in context, is Reverend Jesse Jackson. And so I saw human rights, civil rights, civic engagement my entire life. I also saw the ministry. And my father had defined his ministry in the spirit of his mentor, Reverend Martin Luther King, of having personal salvation and social salvation, that you needed two wings to fly. And so I formally went to North Carolina A&T for undergrad and studied business. I went to Northwestern University, Kellogg School for finance, worked in investment banking for many years. Always felt a spiritual calling, always had great admiration and appreciation for the activists and the people that don't get the credit for advancing rights. The elected officials seem to get it. And I first ran for elected office at the age of 56.
Okay.
So I was in private business and supporting civil
I
rights.
thought you was 56 now.
Yeah, 60. And so that's why, and so I got drafted. So I want some people and some person that's out there, to know it's never too late. And sometimes you can be drafted and let the Lord do what he wants to do.
Okay. So tell me this, how did your early exposure to civic engagement and all that you experienced being with Reverend Jackson, his leadership and his awesomeness in the movement, how did that influence the way you approach leadership today, especially in communities that are facing economic disparities?
Well, you have to be intellectually up for the rigor to be well studied in the spirit of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., academically very profound in the spirit of Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays, and even today, Reverend Dr. Kevin Cosby of St. Stephen's in Kentucky, also the president of Simmons College, Reverend Otis Moss Jr. There's so many young, bright, capable minds. Reverend Reginald Sharp in Chicago. So I think you sharpen your mind and you keep your heart supple.
Okay.
Having a heart for people, to be able to empathize with people, not just sympathize, to never forget where you came from,
Right.
and feel other people's pain. So when I think of voting and voting rights, I think of my grandmother, Matilda Burns, from Easley, South Carolina, who was denied the right to read, denied the right to vote, not born in a hospital, not recorded at birth with a birth certificate. So to be able to never lose that feeling, no matter what channels you go to in life, never forget where you come from.
Okay. So before entering politics, you talked earlier about you spending years in finance and investment. So how does that experience shape your approach to economic policy, wealth building, and underserved communities?
Well, you can do most deals, you find out, with the right terms and conditions.
Okay.
And the way the politics are inseparable from that is that you first have to, voting is your right. Business is a privilege. So to the degree that our votes are in jeopardy, the privilege of being in business goes away. What I mean by privilege, in business, you have to have protection, the superintendence and the supervision of the law. And if not, people can take your assets from you. So being able to fight for the opportunity and be able to have the technical competence in order to take advantage of the opportunity, but they're both intertwined. So it helps me think of the broader picture, not just, as my father would say, not looking through life through a keyhole, but looking through the door.
Right. Leading a higher education institution, I have young people all the time. And I'm often advocating for them having access to education, having access to opportunity. And we do know that there's challenges to our voting right, the Voting Right Act and those type of things. And you talk about finance being a privilege and voting being a right. What message will you give to young people about their ability to be able to participate in finance investment by protecting those things that are just literally a right?
Well, if you look at getting your Series 7, Series 63, even for your securities exam, the financial houses have to sponsor you. You just can't go sponsor yourself. So unless you have a friend, a father, you've been grandfathered in with a certain institution, a certain pedigree, you've been locked out institutionally.
Yeah.
So I would want people to understand that many rules that were put into a place, that the spirit and the legacy of Jim Crow and slavery, it reverberates, it still lives on. And we have to right some of those wrongs. Nobody here today is a direct person that enacted those laws,
Right.
but some communities have been culturally, historically, the beneficiaries of those laws. And we have to look at the question of how do you create restitution? How do you create equity? How do you create inclusivity? How do you expound upon diversity? Those were great programs. I stand by them. I started a diversity, equity, inclusion caucus in the United States Congress. It's not something that the president, agrees with, but I vehemently disagree with him and with Mr. Pete Hegseth. And so we have a government of co-equal branches of government. So I don't work for the president, and I can talk back to the Secretary of Defense, and that's my obligation.
Yeah. So young people and elevating their voice. I often tell them that your voice is your calling. It's vocar, a Latin word that means calling. And so your voice, whether it's your personal mission, your purpose, is so critically important. So I have a question about economic equity has been a central theme in your work. What specific policies do you believe can most effectively close the wealth gap?
Well, access to capital.
Okay.
We have, in many of our historically black colleges, such brilliant minds. We cannot be judged under the same criteria as other universities, such as 4 years in and 4 years out. Many of our students, life gets in the way. They have double burdens, double obligations, taking care of family members, taking care of relatives, as well as making a living while they're going to school. So what does it matter if you finish school in 4 years, 6 years, or 8 years? That's how our schools should be judged, is on the success of the talent that comes through that. I'll tell you a quick story. My grandmother, Gertrude Brown, from the Muck, Pahookie, Florida, down there.
You monk?
Pahookie, Florida.
Pahookie, Florida.
Yep, and the Everglades
Okay.
area near Lake Okeechobee. I took her when she was in her 90s to sing Hidden Figures. And so after the movie, I asked her, what'd you think about it, grandmother? She says, oh, Catherine, she's always been so smart. And I said, you mean Dr. Johnson? Then I realized the lady's name was Dr. Catherine Johnson. And she said, she's been so smart. I said, do you know her? She says, yeah, we shared a fence in Newport News, Virginia. And she says, I enjoyed the movie. She says, but it was missing the prequel. The prequel that they need to create for the movie was none of those young ladies ever had a white teacher. They all had black teachers, and that's the world that she grew up. So she saw their brilliance. Now, these are the ladies that put man on the moon, that did the math. They were the human supercomputers. Our community, our history is filled with this sort of brilliance. When John Glenn left, he wouldn't leave to go to outer space without Katherine Johnson doing the math.
Yeah.
He should have came over and celebrated her and put her in the vehicle with her for the parade. So too many of our talented people are hidden. So when we have finally unlocked the genius in all these campuses and these young minds, we're going to get some more Charles Drew that's going to expand the blood plasma.
Yeah.
We're going to get some more Dr. Johnsons that are going to take us to space. You're going to get some more real McCoys that can be industrialists, and Dr. Carji Woodson. So let us unlock this talent. It'd be good for the nation, be good for all of our children.
Yeah, definitely agree. So tell me this, how would you define your leadership style, and how has it evolved since you've taken office? You took office at 56, but you've been leading a long time.
2024.
20,
He said 56.
2024. Oh yeah, 2024. So tell me, how do you define your leadership? Has it changed as a result, or has Congress changed, helped it to evolve some, or what?
Yeah, I would say, you have to know your district,
Yeah.
who the people are that you're really coming to represent, to fight for. And I think of myself as putting on different thinking hats, that sometimes I think like a farmer, these are the opportunities in this limited piece of land. What can it yield? Sometimes I have to think like a fisherman. I don't know what's going to happen today, and we'll have to see what comes in the net. Sometimes you have to think like a train conductor. You got to get on the track and drive your agenda straight ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And other times you have to think like a physician and just touch the temperature and figure out what the body is giving you. So I think in politics, you have to be extremely flexible. That was a book that I read on thinking hats. That kind of shaped me on which lens do you put on at the time. But also I think you can advocate for a good, solid business, and you can be ethical.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I studied business is because you can always make more pie. You can help more people. You can grow corporations. You can grow value. You can make life better for so many people. Politics can be inverted, that there are only 537 federally elected offices between the president, vice president, Senate, and the House of Representatives. So sometimes it becomes a competition of the ideas where people can get really fragile. And so it fluctuates. I think you have to be extremely versatile in your thinking.
Okay. So, and this is an important question because, right now, we're living in a contemporary narrative that many of us never would have experienced. I never would have thought that I was experiencing some of the divisiveness and separation that we're experiencing now with all the progress that has been made. So what does effective collaboration look like in today's political climate? And how do you work across differences to get results?
Well, I would tell you, demography is destiny.
Okay.
So I serve on foreign affairs, and I also serve on the agriculture committee. People ask me, why would I be on those two committees? I said, it's the whole world. America is only 4.5% of the world's population. When we become isolationists in our trade, that doesn't make us stronger, that makes us weaker. Our fruits and vegetables are coming from South and Central America. Mm-hmm. We're manufacturing technology abroad. So it's one world. It's spherical. So I always try to look not necessarily linear, but also cyclical, mm-hmm. and also trying to see something spherical where you can look at the upside of the problem, the downside, from the outside and the inside out. Oftentimes your perspective changes from where you stand and how you see a problem. Yeah. So I try to find unique ways to problem solve.
Okay. So can you share a moment in Congress where you had to rethink your position or your approach? Because I think your experience is so unique. When you have spent as much time as you spend in business and investment and banking, et cetera, and then to come to Congress, with sometimes it feels like herding cats or whatever. Have there been a moment in Congress where you had to rethink your position or your approach?
Sure. I think some people may be naive. Some people just may be mean-spirited, mm-hmm. and some people simply may not know. So when do you lead? When do you follow? Something becomes a bit of an instinct. That's where on January 20th of 2025, with my congressman, we were at the inauguration, mm-hmm. of President Trump. So I think it's our obligation to go in here respectfully what the president has to say. I think you keep those doors open.
Right.
I also served as the national co-chair of the National Prayer Breakfast. I do believe in prayer. And I also believe that you can keep your convictions about it. And mm-hmm. so that prayer that I gave with the president right there is like, for the record, I would have said that about anyone. And then January 27th, after the president on January 20th, 2025 says, diversity, equity, and inclusion is illegal, immoral, and radical. It was 7 days later that my colleague, Congressman Cleo Fields, and I created the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Caucus. We think that adds value to the nation. I'm old enough to remember when I used to come to South Carolina in the summertime with my grandfather that worked at the post office in Greenville, and we would drive to Atlanta to see Hank Aaron in the home run derby.
Yeah.
My grandfather also played in the Negro League, and I just saw the growth of the South, the opportunities. I saw these programs that have been good for the veterans to make it more inclusive, where our leadership has risen. And so on that, I challenged the president and said, this is why I have to put a stake in the ground. It may not be popular with the Democratic Party, but it's the right thing to do. So when I see 600,000 African-American young ladies that have been fired and laid off, when now the reports come out to say what DOGE did, Department of Government Efficiency that Elon Musk had, is they were targeting African-American programs. They were specifically excluding us. I think you have to put a stake in the ground and say, here's where I stand. And now I've got to go educate my other colleagues about what its virtue is, where they've turned that term into didn't earn it. I know what diversity programs are. Out of many, we're one. That's the call for diversity. God made diversity, equality. That's our 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
Inclusivity for people to have access to, that are differently able to have access to curb cuts and women's sports program. All that comes out of that body of civil rights laws. So I'm not going to write it off, and I'm not going to be afraid to advocate for it. So that's why I've been very much a proponent of it.
So tell me, what long-term change would you like to help achieve through your time in Congress?
I would like to see us create financial institutions,
Okay.
have access to capital, where far too often too many entrepreneurs have been held back. And I'm a huge believer in mind power, that the greatest asset is not beneath the ground, it's above the ground. When you develop human minds, human potential, life can flourish, life can prosper. So I'm very excited about the spread of this technology and other good things. And I want our children to have access to it. And then we're going to see some miraculous things happen.
Yeah. So thank you for that. That's amazing. It reflects on what we do in higher education, why that is so important. So your father is a historic figure in American civil rights. How do you honor that legacy while also forging your own path? You're already doing that, but talk to me about that journey.
Well, it's like people would ask me, like, how was it growing up in your father's shadow, being Reverend Jesse Jackson's son? And I would tell them, I've never grew up in my father's shadow. I grew up in his sunlight, and I've been very proud
Say
of
that
it.
again. Say that again.
I did not grow up in my father's shadow of Reverend Jesse Jackson. I grew up in my father's sunlight, that I've always felt the warmth of his sun. I felt his brilliance. He's always been a part of my life. My mother and father have been together for 65 years. And so I've known a person of tremendous courage, character, that would, that would have his faith. Faith wasn't something that was hypothetical to us. It's something he lived, he breathed. He oftentimes called himself a long-distance runner. And to see everything he's fought for his whole life, now trying to get dismantled right now, it lets me know that from dusk to dawn of his life, he fought for these rights. I saw them championing in. And let's say this starts in 1965, the crown jewel, this achievement of the Voting Rights Act. Not until that bill was signed could we have access to equal rights. In 1965, there were only 72 elected blacks in all of the United States. 72. So I am 60 years of age, born in 1966. I'm the first generation of African Americans born with equal rights. And I think about that when I'm on that floor and the things I have to stand for. And I don't want things to go back on my watch in my lifetime. I've seen the attack on women. I've seen the attack on other communities. I've seen the attack on the African American community. And that's where I put a stake in the ground.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Can you share a tough decision you made that taught you something fundamental about effective leadership?
Right. Yeah, I never considered running for office before. And the first Congressional District was the first district first office, Oscar DePriest, in 1928, after blacks were out of the Congress for almost 2.5
Yeah.
decades after Reconstruction. Chicago's first congressional district had Congressman Oscar DePriest to be the first person to come back into the Congress. So in 2028, the first district will have African-American leadership consecutively for 100 years. There's no other district in the nation like that. When Congressman Bobby Rush, after 30 years, my predecessor, decided not to run, I started getting calls, a bit of a draft movement, and I was looking for everyone else to take the shot to be the one to run for office. And then I joined. My father told me, if you run, you may lose. If you don't run, you definitely lose. So take a chance.
Yeah.
And so I would say, believe in yourself, prepare yourself. Like my friend Reverend Cosby told me, do what you can and let God do what you can't. So it was a big risk for me to run, and
that is a tough decision. In today's environment, it's a very tough decision.
right,
Because people
so-
put themselves out and become scrutinized all over for whatever reason.
Yeah, and you got to deal with the lies and the rumors and the innuendo and why are you doing this, and cap your income and other things. But sometimes you have to say, I'm not running around chasing a sack of nickels, and I'm not doing this for funds. I've got to do this because it makes a difference.
I actually have a picture. You mentioned something. I have a picture of Congress, the Mississippi Congress, after Reconstruction, and the number of African Americans that were in that Congress. And I have a picture of today's image. It's a stark image.
Wow.
What was happening in those 20 years after Reconstruction, or more, a couple decades, where Jim Crow and all those had expelled all the accomplishments that were made after the civil rights and during Reconstruction. And we look at it now, and look at what's happening, it's a scary sight. And the decision that you made to put a stake in the ground is the decision that many have to make, because we can't go backwards. And finally,
I would say there's so many talented people out there that are in the business of, they're in engineering, they're in the sciences, they're in, private practice, lawyers, in the ministry. I would encourage them, think of going into public office. We need those voices that have alternative experiences. You don't have to have a lifetime of being in politics. You need to have some practical business experience. I've started businesses, sold businesses, dealt with the complexity that you have in being a black in business, minority paperwork, the DBE, the MBEs. I've seen those programs. That's why at this age and stage of my life, I felt prepared to be able to be on the inside and help form the laws, the rules that will regulate those businesses.
so let's talk about leading below the line. And I know your time is short, so I want to get to this point. What I mean by that is, oftentimes we don't know what's going on beneath the surface, very much like the iceberg effect. What we see up here, and oftentimes leaders attack that, but there's something fundamental that's going on below the line that we don't know for leaders in their teams. And we have to dive in, find exactly what it is. When you hear that term, leading below the line, how does it resonate with you? What comes to mind?
Well, I think in your brilliance, you nailed it. I think of the Titanic hitting the iceberg. That iceberg was 10 times bigger beneath the ground than what was emerged above the water line. And how do you get to the bottom line? Means you have to gain the revenues, get past the expenses, and then you start looking at the double bottom line. What did you net? Well, in our community, if our insurance is higher, our cost of capital is higher, our interest rates are higher, if we've been denied capital and loans, how can you get to the double bottom line? How can you get into the black? We have all the same expenses, but don't get the top line revenue and get overcharged. The other thing, that's why you have to have transparency. You have to democratize capital, where people's ideas are underwritten based upon their merit, upon their value, not because of their race and being held back. So we can't let this error in our history invert what we know to be correct. We've been discriminated against then and now. It's clear in the insurance pattern. The zip code means the zone improvement plan. It's been used and engineered and redlined us into these isolated areas. So I don't want our young people to feel despondent. Like, no, now it's your turn to lead.
Yeah.
So join the field. This is another generation. History is unbroken continuity, and it's time to resist and go forward.
Yeah. I think so much to look at leadership that sometimes I don't think we have made enough room for young people or encourage them, as you're doing, to step up and lead, to say, you got to own this space. And the leaders you're looking for are right there. You are the leaders you're looking for. So is there a quote, and you've said so many nuggets that I'm going to look forward to taking this video, this podcast, and pulling them out, and because there's so much you can expound on in any direction. But is there a quote or a mantra that resonates with you?
Yes, it comes out of Dr. W.B. Du Bois, profound, prolific sociologist, first African-American to get a PhD from Harvard. In his book, seminal book called Black Reconstruction, he talked about what needs to go forward in America for the healing. And he says the cost of liberty is greater than the price of oppression. And so it's worth fighting for liberty. And no sooner than we received the 15th Amendment, many states started voter suppression. Our country is built on some contradictions, and now we have to continue to fight to undo those contradictions.
You know, you say that, and I remember in Greenville, at the City Club building, there are bricks that have these profound quotes in it, and that quote is in one of those bricks. And I remember reading it when I was going to a meeting there, so that is pretty profound. And finally, do you have a hero?
Oh, I've been blessed to have my father as a friend and hero and a minister, and it's really cool when your father is a minister. People talks about preachers, kids, and other stuff, but you can ask your father the eternal questions. And it was always so cool being in my father's presence because he was a man amongst men.
Yeah.
If my friends, parents, or children got into trouble, I knew as soon as I got to my dad, he would help and could help them. And so I put my dad way up there. Reverend Hall here was his minister when he was growing up. The civil rights activists, the abolitionists are the people I look up to in history. And I look up to you. You have an enormous responsibility, and your job is never easy. And thank you for your advocacy and your service for our nation.
Thank you. Thank you. Congressman Jackson, I just appreciate this time with you. I want to thank you. First, I want to offer my condolences again. You lost your father, as well as the country and the world mourn for the loss of a great civil rights leader, someone who made change, made it possible for me to sit here with you, leading a predominantly white institution in South Carolina, living out the mission and the purpose that God has given me. So I want to thank you for your sacrifice as being a child of this leader that all of us had a part of, and he gave pouring to all of us.
Well,
Thank you.
You made him proud.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Below the Line podcast is brought to you by the University of South Carolina Upstate. Look for our monthly write-up in Greenville Business Magazine, and for more information, go to uscupstate.edu.